انذاني متفاضل اقتصان انزه هولي زبرانات امين.
So today's gospel is about the visitation, as we just heard, visitation of Saint Mary to Elizabeth, her cousin. And so we learn from this gospel, to start off, I want us to reflect on a question. What is service, and how do I feel, or what do I think when I hear the word service? So to understand this gospel is a perfect example of service. And so to understand the full life, the full word of service, I want us to look at the life of Saint Mary, because she lived a true life. So we're going to visit 3 parts. The third one is today's gospel, and the first 2 we'll visit very quickly to fully understand what is service. So before we begin, I want us to remember or acknowledge that service needs humility, and humility needs service. Because with one without the other is actually harmful for your spiritual life. And we can see this as service without humility means I'm self-serving. I'm doing everything to make myself better, to build my own ego. And then we see humility without service is laziness. Someone else will do it. Someone else will take care of it. So you need both in order to benefit. And so the first key moment is Saint Mary's birth. We can read of her birth from the Synaxar in the first day of Beshon. It's 2 paragraphs, so I'll read it very quickly. So on this day, the first day of Beshon, the church celebrates the birth of the pure Virgin Saint Mary, the Mother of God, the Theotokos, through whom salvation came to mankind. She was born in the city of Nazareth, where her parents lived. Her father was grieved in his heart, for he could not offer an offering to God, for he did not have any children. In the fullness of time, according to the divine will, the angel of the Lord was sent to announce to Joachim, her father, while he was on the mountain praying, and said to him, "The Lord will give you offspring, through whom salvation comes to the world." Immediately he went down the mountain, believing what the angel told him, and told his wife Anna of what he saw and heard. She rejoiced, gave thanks to the Lord, and vowed that the child who was born to her would become a servant in the house of the Lord all the days of her life. And so she conceived and gave birth to Saint Mary, and who had become queen of all women of the world, and through her we have received the grace. And so the key sentence from this short reading is, she rejoiced, she gave thanks to the Lord, and she vowed that the child, Saint Mary, would become a servant in the house of the Lord. So from reading this, we learn that service is a lifestyle. And we see that Saint Mary, her entire life was dedicated to service from before she was born, even until now, to today, where she intercedes for us. And she, like, you have a problem, she's like, Yadra, Daddy, like, Yadra, come help me. Or Saint Mary, come help me. And so we can see that her whole life started from before she was born until today. And then the second example I want us to look at is in the Gospel of St. John in chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. It's very short. It's about the wedding in Cana of Galilee. And so I'll read these 5 short verses for us. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding, and when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does this concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." And so here we learn from this second example that Saint Mary was known as someone who serves. Her life, since it was dedicated as service, everyone around her knew that she served. Because we can see in the beginning that they either 2 options. 1, they came to her and asked her what to do, or 2, she noticed that they ran out of wine. So both options, it's her paying attention and her serving. And it's, if you think about it as they asked her, we can think of, if I have a medical issue or a problem, I'll ask a doctor. Why am I asking a doctor? I'm not asking the guy next to me. It's because the doctor dedicated their life to becoming a doctor. They dedicated their life to studying, to living a life where they learn about the medical field. And so we can see that in Saint Mary. She lived a life of service, and that's why they asked her. But the most important part from this passage, from this gospel, is I want us to notice that she didn't give a solution when they asked. She said, whatever he says to you, do it. And so she didn't offer a solution, but she offered the solution to them. She gave them the solution. And so here we see the true meaning of service, that service is directing others to God. This could be through our words, or it could be through our actions. And there's a very famous quote that by Francis of Assisi. He says, preach the gospel at all times. When necessary, use words. So for us, direct others to God at all times through your actions. And when necessary, use words. And finally, which was today's gospel, is the best perfect example of service. So today we see that Saint Mary, because of her life of service, was able to serve Elizabeth even when it was difficult. Like, if you think of it, Saint Mary at the time was pregnant, serving Elizabeth, who was pregnant, and she had just traveled a long distance, and she stays there for 3 months. So this is already a difficult situation to already be pregnant and then to serve someone who's pregnant. And so, but the important part is that in her service, she didn't just direct Elizabeth to God, but she herself brought God, baby Jesus in her womb, to her. And so some key phrases from today's gospel reading is in the very first verse we read right here. Now Mary arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste. So with haste, it doesn't mean that Saint Mary rushed to finish the service, but she rushed to begin because she knew that she needed to serve. And so from this example, we can learn that when we have service, we're not rushing to finish and like, oh, I could say that I did it, but rather I'm rushing to begin so I can take my time with the service. And so that's the very first thing from today's gospel. The second phrase that I want us to focus on is that when Elizabeth had received the blessing from Saint Mary from Jesus, and she said the baby leaped in her womb, we see Saint Mary's response. She doesn't say, yeah, that was me, I did that. But rather she said, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit has rejoiced in God my Savior. So from this we can learn that Saint Mary didn't take any of the credit. She didn't try to say, oh, I did this, or I'm holy. But rather she said, the Lord, my soul magnifies the Lord and rejoices in God my Savior. So, and we also see this in the lives of the saints. If you think to Daniel, the prophet, whenever he had interpreted the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar wanted to reward him, but he said that the angel of the Lord told me what the dream meant. The angel of the Lord. So it's always attribute the fruits to God and his angels. And so the third thing I want us to focus on is the very last verse of today's gospel, which was, and Mary remained with her about 3 months. So 3 months is a long time. And so if you think about it, it shows that service wasn't a one-time event. It wasn't coming to church on Sunday, and then that's my service for today, and then tomorrow I'm going to forget about everything, and the next week I'll have my second moment of service. But rather, it's a process. Every day there's something to do. And in our lives, we can always direct others through service. But how can we do that to direct others to God? But how can we direct others to God if we don't take the time to learn about him and how to direct him to God? And so how can I lead or direct someone to a place I have no idea where it is? So this is part of the process, which is to remember that service to direct others to Christ. That I myself must know him by reading my Bible, which is hearing his word, and by praying, which is speaking to him every day, to form a genuine relationship. Because when I have a relationship with Christ, then I'll be able to direct others to Christ. And so the last thing I want us to think about is, why do we serve? What is the point of all the service? Because we serve for the sake of Christ, not because I'm needed to serve, but because I need to serve. The service, we often think I'm serving to help the person in front of me, but rather the person in front of me is helping me by letting me serve them. And so everyone can serve, and everyone needs to be served. And we read in Mark chapter 10, verses 33 and 45, that whoever desires to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever of you desires to be first of all shall be slave of all. For even the Son of Man, which is Christ, did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many. And so 2 key words from this is servant. Servant means that I'm working in the master's house, and I'm expecting to be fed, I'm expecting to have a house, expecting these things. But a slave has no expectations of reward. And that's the second word he said. He said, be a slave of all. So being a slave means I have no expectation, I'm serving, and I'm not expecting anything in return. And so to summarize everything that we talked about today, 1, you can't have service without humility, and vice versa. Because service without humility is self-serving, and humility without service is just laziness. Service isn't a one-time event, but it's a lifestyle. And we see that through St. Mary, how before she was even born, she was dedicated to service, and even after, till today, she serves and intercedes for us. And the true definition of service is to direct others to God through actions and, when necessary, words. Service is done with haste, not that I'm rushing, but I'm rushing to begin. And whenever the service is fruitful, I don't take the credit for it, but I attribute the fruits to God, because he's the one who, his grace is what allowed the service to succeed. And to remember, service is a process, and I need to have direction of where Christ is, who Christ is, in order to direct. And also serve for the sake of Christ with no expectation. So in conclusion, service can be anything from giving someone a hug to full on going to church and praying, because service it can be anything as long as the goal is to direct others to Christ. And glory be to God.